Okay, this section here is an interesting one. What we're going to do is we're going to enhance the fire sequence, if you will, that we have now. We're going to enhance our projectile.
Right.
We're going to make it kind of cool, aren't we?
Yeah, if we're going to make a custom gun, we might as well make a custom projectile for it.
Exactly. So what we're going to do is we've picked the plasma sphere to kind of pick on.
Right.
And in demonstrating this, we're actually going to create our second class inside the 3D Buzz package that we'll be calling upon. So to do that, let's just go ahead and get busy. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here and grab my viper.uc file. And I'm simply going to right-click on it and drag and drop it back inside this area and say copy here. Reason is I'm going to come in here and just give it a new name. So I'm going to call this one here P chunk. Since we're going to be stealing from chunk, it's our plasma chunk. And I'll double-click it, and I'll just come down to here and
erase everything.
And erase everything all the way down to there.
Like doing a new file.
And yeah, I know. And except I've got a couple things already set up in here where I could just simply say P chunk, and I didn't have to draw all those things from above. And class Viper expands. Except this time, what we're going to do is it's our class name again. Our class is going to be called P chunk, and it's going to expand. You probably guessed it, I hope. Chunk. Ooh, what do you think? Easy enough? And we're going to have some code in here, and we're also going to have our own default properties. All right, so there we go. We've set up the basics of P-Chunk, but what I want to do is let's make this kind of special. Let's see how I come up with this information to put in here as opposed to just start typing out all sorts of crazy stuff. Okay? I mean, it's really easy to understand with the whole fire thing that, you find a gun, go in there, and look at its fire sequence. But where do I come up with stuff like this? Well, let's just kind of move this out of the way. And there's Unreal Ed. Let's just click on Unreal Ed and come in here. All right, so let's close this guy right here. Actor Class Browser. Let's go ahead and bring that up. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to come down to Projectiles. And then from in here, let's go ahead and come down a little bit lower. First of all, here's Chunk, and we're going to let's go ahead and steal from Chunk first.
Right. See, okay, here's kind of the idea we have behind this projectile. We're going to make it look like the plasma sphere, but we want it to bounce instead of just keep going straight. So we saw that that master chunk we had before bounced. Chunk was actually where it got some of that code from.
Right. So now. And actually, if we wanted to, we could go ahead and expand Chunk and Chunk 1, and there is Master Chunk. And you can see how it's inheriting all the way on down from Chunk up above. But what we want to do, and if you also remember, Chunk itself had was a draw type of mesh and had this little piece of metal that flew around and all. If we come all the way up here to Chunk, and if we would have used that instead of Master Chunk, we wouldn't have seen anything, would we?
Right.
We'd have still seen sparks, actually, but we wouldn't have actually seen metal coming out of the gun.
Right.
So what we can do is just come into Chunk, double-click on it, come back here into the code, and now remember, P-Chunk extends on Chunk, right?
Right.
I mean, we're grabbing everything in Chunk, we're inheriting that into P-Chunk, and now what we want to do is we want to actually take advantage of object-oriented programming here, and we want to override one of these functions. So to do that, and the reason we're overriding it at this point is we want to change one little tiny thing.
Right. Here it's got a metal clank sound. Obviously it's metal, but the plasma sphere has its own kind of like burning, melty sound when it hits something, and we want to use
melty.
Yeah, we want to use that instead.
So let's just go ahead and come on down here. And I'm looking for the hit wall. There it is, the hit wall function. And I'm just going to simply copy it. Copy the entire function. Let's go to right there before the next function begins. So Control-C to copy. Now let's come back over here to P-Chunk. And somewhere between class and default properties, I'm just going to do a Control-V to paste it. So now, even though we're expanding Chunk right there, we still, this function right here, we had access to it, but now by declaring it again inside here, now we've got our own, we're overriding that function with our own function. Same name, whole 9 yards, so it'll get called same way as before. And we're doing all of this so that one little area down here, here's the sound that's being made when it hits the wall. We want to change this. So basically, instead of randomizing and all this good stuff, I'm just going to come in here. You know what? I'll make it even simpler. I'm going to delete all of these lines here. And let's take the else and leave it as just play sound. Now, what sound do we want to play? Right now it's playing hit 5. Instead of that, let's come back here to the Unreal Editor, and let me show you how we get to the sound we want to do. I'm just going to come on down a little bit further. Actually, let's see where we are up here. Projectiles. And looking for, hang on, down, Plasma Sphere. And what I'm going to do is just right-click on it and come down here to Default Properties. Okay? From Default Properties, I'll just simply come down to Plasma Sphere, and there's my effect sound that it's playing. So I'll just simply click in here, Control-C to record this sound, and I can leave this open for a minute because we're actually going to come back to it. But let's come back over here to our UC file, and then from inside here where it says Sound Play 05, let's just highlight that area and Control-V to paste. Now it's Sound Play from botpack.pulsegun.pulseexplode. Okay? So, Logan, anything you want to add to that, or?
No, that's pretty much it. That's what we wanted to do. Okay,
so the next thing, and so it's funny, basically all of this copying right here was just so we could make that one change. That's all. Okay? The next thing we want to do is we also want to give it some, we want to give it our own default properties for a few different things. First of all, our draw scale, we need to change it because the draw scale of 1 is going to be way too big with what we want to shoot out here. So let's come in here and say that our draw scale equals 0.19. Let's say that our draw type, you saw before it was a mesh type when we were using Master Chunk. This time we want to use a sprite, where basically that's just an image that's being drawn on a plane that always faces you. So it looks 3D, but in essence it's not. It's really just a flat image.
Right. There's going to be a lot of these, and they're fairly small, so they're really hard to tell.
So DT_sprite. Okay, next section is going to be texture. So what's going to be the texture that we're actually going to use on that? Well, again, let's show you how we get this. Coming back over here to Unreal Editor, let's come up here to Display, and from in Display, I'm going to come down, again, on the Plasma Sphere to his texture area, and Control-C to copy that. Man, this is just too easy. So texture type, Control-V. Texture is going to be from botpack, Plasma Explode, and .bplat, blah, 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 okay? So with that, let's go ahead, and next thing we're going to do sprite projected forward.
And let's see. So we're just basically setting up to look like the sprite, the plasma sphere's projectile. You could just go in there and dig around the display. This is pretty much where we got all these settings from.
Okay, and there's one other one that we're going to do as well, and that is the style is going to be set to STY_ translucent, okay, like such. So with that, there's one big change that we need to make now. Let's go ahead and come into Unreal Ed and close this out, and save pchunk, and that is now back inside our actual viper.uc. Let's scroll all the way down to the bottom where we had our projectile class. Remember we said that it was Unreal I.masterchunk. Now, how about if we just change it to just pchunk?
Just, 3dbuzz.pchunk. Let's actually, pchunk would probably work, but I would just go ahead and say 3dbuzz.pchunk.
I would say pchunk.
Okay.
I would say, yeah, 3dbuzz, we specify the package and all, but in this case, we're actually inside the package, so because of scope, we should actually see it without a problem. So with pchunk in place, we'll go ahead and save this one as well. So that's been saved. The other guy's been saved. Let's go ahead and close him out. And let's just come back over here and run UMake again and let it put everything together.
So, yep.
So far so good. And let's run. Okay. And fire. There we go. Let's come over here and grab our gun and let's see, are we shooting out metal or do we have something different? I would say we now have something different. And you can see we have this little green glowing sphere looking guy. That is, as I'm following around, he's now bouncing all over the room. Ow.
And he hit you in the back.
And he just hit me in the butt. So just shoot these guys like crazy. Yeah, like tennis balls, as Angie just said from the other side of the room. So, anything else you want to add to that, Logan? Or?
Nope, that's pretty much it. It's a very familiar looking projectile, but then we went and added some unique characteristics for our gun.
Exactly, and we showed you by going back into Unreal Ed how we can kind of snoop around through other weapons, other projectiles, and grab information from there and use it inside of our own class.
All the code that's already in the game makes a great reference to look through.
Absolutely. So with that, let's just go ahead and come in here, exit out, and before we close out of this whole lesson, let's quick recap. Basically, inside of Viper.uc now for the projectile type down near the bottom, I told her that we're going to use pchunk. As Logan said, I could have also said 3dbuzz.pchunk, but because of scope, and these are both inside the same package, they do see one another. So I'm telling it to use pchunk, and pchunk is all defined inside this class right here. When it is actually created for in the package, basically what it does is it creates. The class comes from chunk, and so we inherit everything from chunk, and then we actually do a little bit of true object-oriented programming here by grabbing one of the functions that was defined in chunk. Again, we did this through going back into Unreal Ed, going down to chunk, double-clicking on it, grabbing the hit wall function from out of there, pasting it inside of our own pchunk code area, and then in here we did this so that we could simply come down and modify our play sound so that we could play the sound that we wanted to play. And I showed you how we could get the sound by simply going over and finding whichever object that you wanted to steal the sound from, whichever projectile, which we did. We went over there and found the plasma sphere, grabbed this sound, pasted it back here. So this is just function overriding, leaving everything else the same. We're not going to mess with all that because we're going to end up messing up the way this guy's bouncing off walls.
Right.
And then finally we came down to our default properties area, and we simply scaled our image down. We told it that it was going to be a sprite type, set what it was going to look like, and a couple of other parameters as well regarding the way that it's going to be sent out. And then when we compiled, what happened was both of these two UC files are read and put into the package where we can spawn objects, object of type Viper and a pchunk object type. Okay, so with that concludes this section right here. Thanks a lot, guys.